Doesn't insulin resistance keep you from losing weight? This idea is understandable for two main reasons. The first is because of videos like this.
7 signs you have insulin resistance, which is why you can't lose weight.
That are unfortunately extremely prevalent all over social media. Secondly, we do know that insulin resistance induces a compensatory increase in insulin production, referred to as hyperinsulinemia. This means that people with insulin resistance have more circulating insulin in their bloodstream. We know that insulin's effects on the fat cell is to decrease fat release and increase fat storage. Therefore, what if there is some sort of selective insulin resistance process? And what if there is some sort of selective insulin resistance process, where some cells become resistant to insulin like the muscles and the liver, but fat cells stay exquisitively sensitive to the fat-storing effects of insulin? Therefore, individuals are unable to lose weight because the fat cell is constantly being stimulated to hold on and store fat. The problem with this hypothesis is that during the development of insulin resistance, it appears that the adipose tissue is one of, if not the first tissues to become resistant to insulin. In fact, it's hypothesized that the adipose tissue may actually be the first tissue to become insulin resistant. The reason is because the adipose tissue is the primary site for lipid storage. We know that excessive lipid accumulation leads to an impairment in insulin signaling that we call insulin resistance. Therefore, it is not until the fat cell becomes insulin resistant that it can no longer safely store fat, and this fat begins leaking into the bloodstream and being stored in places such as the liver, kidneys, muscles, and other organs. And this lipid accumulation causes these tissues to also become resistant to insulin. Therefore, many hypothesize the fat tissue is the first tissue to become insulin resistant, which leads to the downstream cascade of muscle insulin resistance, liver insulin resistance, etc. With that being said, this is simply a mechanistic explanation. So let's see what happens when we put it to the test. This study, which gave participants a home-based exercise program and actively put these individuals in a caloric deficit, found that those who began the study with the most severe insulin resistance lost the most weight at follow-up, indicating insulin resistance may have actually facilitated more fat loss. This study found that insulin resistance was associated with a lower odds of gaining weight and a greater incidence of weight loss in the preceding months, indicating that those who were insulin resistant were the least likely to gain weight and the most likely to lose weight. And all of this makes sense, as it is often hypothesized that insulin resistance is actually a physiological adaptation to prevent additional weight gain, despite potential adverse effects on the cardiovascular system and other bodily systems. When excessive food consumption is coupled with inactivity, it appears safe to conclude that if your energy deficit is the same as your counterparts, insulin resistance will not inhibit you from losing weight and may actually facilitate it. However, one thing that people with insulin resistance often suffer with is an increase in appetite and a reduction in energy expenditure, which, despite the rate of weight gain likely being far slower than someone who is more insulin sensitive, could still lead individuals to gain weight over time. However, in an energy deficit, insulin resistance does not appear to inhibit weight loss, and more than likely will facilitate it.